Hey everybody, welcome back to the Behind the Screen podcast. I'm John Aljets, and joining me this week is Lydia from The Simpsons Theory.
Hi John, how are you?
I'm good, how are you?
Yeah, very good, thank you.
Now, we need to talk about The Simpsons, specifically the longevity of the show. You know, it's been around for 32 seasons, whopping 32 seasons, which might not be as impressive when you compare it to something like Doctor Who, for example, that's been around for, 50 plus years, but still. But over the course of those 32 years, America's Favorite Family has left quite the indelible impact on not just popular culture, but society as a whole. I feel that's safe to say. But what has made this show last quite so long? What about it has made it so hard to stop? That's some of what we're going to talk about on the show today, both on YouTube and on Spotify. All right, so as I said, we need to talk about why this show has been around for so long. How has it managed to make it to 32 seasons? Which, by the way, it blows my mind that we made it to 32 seasons.
Yeah, so much content, and it's just, I think it's the amount of work that goes into an episode of The Simpsons. I mean, we've looked at some of the animators, and it just seems to be layers and layers and layers of older, I mean, we've been talking to an animator called Jefferson Weekly, and he's been working on the show since its conception. And then recently, luckily on Instagram, we've chatted to a recent animator, and he is one of the background animators, and he has really spoken about how I think it's the real team, and it's the artist that's behind it. You can tell it's really well orchestrated, and it's a production within 28 minutes every time.
I used to listen to the commentaries on the DVDs a lot, which, by the way, that's one of my favorite things about DVD releases of Matt Groening shows, is that every single episode winds up having a commentary. And I remember I was listening to one, and they were saying that it takes like 9 months from conception to release for the writing and then the animating and all that sort of stuff. So it's a crazy amount of work that goes into the show. And to think that they've been doing that for 32 seasons is ridiculous. It's insane.
It's all the pop culture references that with every joke, I think I was watching an episode earlier, and Homer was having a fight with Mario just in the garden. He was throwing dustbin bins at Mario, who was trying to dodge him. And I was like, that's for one tiny segment of the episode. And that amount of work that's gone into it. I think it was something like Homer was internet famous for doing something stupid, but then it turned into this whole bizarre there's layers to it. It looks like a lot of work.
So you gotta wonder, is it the pop culture impact of the show that has really managed to propel it for so long? Do you think that maybe it is, do you think that maybe it's the fact that the show makes reference to pop culture? Or do you think that it's the fact that the show itself has become so ingrained in pop culture?
I think it's good that entwines a little bit of pop culture, but I think the trouble was with the first couple of new episodes I was watching, it was almost too much of it. And I was thinking, you kind of took away us from the family aspect and the core characters that we love. I think I watched an episode where Marge joins War of Warcraft, and that was just so overblown and it just dates really easily. I think it needs to find, and it has found recently, a really good balance between the classic Simpsons and just inserting a bit of pop culture that makes the headlines, like the Trump predictions and things like that.
I do know that there was a period of time where people felt like it was suffering from Family Guyism, where the show was trying to compete with Family Guy, and so it was becoming a little bit more ridiculous, kind of moving away from the what was the term that Al Jean used once? It was a sitcom with flexible reality. It wasn't a cartoon, but then it became a cartoon. It does seem like it's kind of calmed down maybe a little bit.
Yeah, it does, because I think it was really poignant, I think, when they did that crossover with the Simpsons guy, and it was good in a way because it kind of showed me how The Simpsons does different from Family Guy, but then it was just that really overblown fight scene of Homer and Peter Griffin on that car for ages, and it was only then you're like, oh no, please don't, leave it alone.
It's like they felt like they had to do a chicken fight moment.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Now, it's kind of interesting because my own history with The Simpsons, I approach The Simpsons in a way that's maybe different from a lot of other people, in that I didn't grow up with it necessarily. In my household, my parents actually hated The Simpsons. They thought that it was, vulgar and, well, I mean, if they look at what's on TV now and they think The Simpsons is vulgar, then maybe they're just not open-minded. But I did wind up watching it when I got into about middle school. I have a friend who's huge into The Simpsons. But for me, I didn't so much get into The Simpsons as I got into Futurama, which is another Matt Groening show. Futurama is my favorite show of all time. That's why my Twitter handle is Bender Waffles.
Ah,
yeah.
Is that because you like the sci-fi element?
I think that it's the characters for me that really caused me to latch on to Futurama more than The Simpsons. I do like The Simpsons characters, don't get me wrong. Like, obviously they're iconic, but like, Fry and Leela and Bender and all of them are just, I wonder if that, but for The Simpsons, is a large reason why the show is like kind of impossible to kill.
Yeah.
Is because maybe the characters are so ingrained in society?
I think so. I think the voice actors, I mean, every character seems to have its own influence over real life actors, characters throughout history. I think it's just really well developed. And with me, Futurama was always really untouchable because I didn't really have cable TV at all. So my parents also hated The Simpsons. So me, my brother and my sister had to hide away in the dark corners of the living room with the remote control like underneath the sofa to try and watch a bit. But I think to make it so long, I think they've just really, really invested in the colourful characters. And I think primarily it started with the family, but gradually you got to know Wiggum. Fat Tony got thrown into it, and I think the characters have really ingrained themselves into the audience.
So maybe it's one of those things where, like, maybe we've just reached a point where people can't imagine a world where The Simpsons isn't still being produced. And that's why it's just managed to go on for so long. It's kind of like, there's some soap operas that have been running for like ridiculously long time. And it's like, who watches those?
Yes.
God, if I know, but somebody must be.
Definitely. There's some really strange British soaps at the moment, and one of them's called EastEnders, and it's supposed to be in like Cockney London, but by now all of the houses they live in, because of gentrification, they'll be worth 3 million now, but there's still Cockney geezers hanging out. It's stuck in time. It's in limbo.
Well, I feel like The Simpsons is kind of in that same boat, because like nowadays you look at the Simpsons household and like, while that family is supposed to be like, a common thing that pops up in the stories is that the Simpsons are poor.
Yeah.
And yet that house would be like a multi-million-dollar house at this point.
Exactly. With a big plot of land and home works at a nuclear power plant where these days you probably need like a doctorate in order to get a job. And
the Simpsons would be rolling in the money at this point. Like, they just would not be poor. So it's like, it seems like time has continued on, but The Simpsons hasn't.
I agree with that, yeah.
But it's kind of, I feel like that's going to happen with any show that winds up lasting over a decade. You're going to get to the point where some things are just dated and don't fully make sense to be the way that they are.
And I feel like the makers kind of throw The Simpsons in these situations where they are so outlandish. But I think some of the pleasure in watching it is that you've got characters like Marge, which have maintained their morals throughout the entire time. So she kind of grounds Homer while he's doing these crazy... I think it's kind of a warming, nice, nostalgic feeling watching The Simpsons. You think everything's going to be okay, it's going to wind down in 28 minutes and they're going to start all over again next time.
Everything's going to return to the status quo.
Yes.
Which is one of the major things, and we're gonna talk about this episode here in a little bit, I'm sure. But the episode where it was revealed that Principal Skinner isn't actually Principal Skinner, where they actually purposely like draw attention at the end of that episode to the fact that, all right, everything's returning to how it was before. We're just going to pretend this didn't happen and like be perfectly fine.
Yeah, put him on a train. He's going out of there. See you later.
Which is fine, because a lot of Simpsons fans have pretended that didn't happen either. That is the moment that a lot of people consider the end of the Golden Age, is when that happened. So that is definitely an episode that is going to be talked about. But
I was going to say, I think we're working on a video next time where it's going to be the top 5 Simpsons episodes you wish never happened. And I think, like you said, just because that's been brought up so many times by fans, I think that'd be a really interesting one to bring up and kind of look at if we did obviously if we took away any episode of The Simpsons, like, it wouldn't change anything. But would it have had any impact, or just rethinking it if it should have been deleted altogether.
The episode that immediately comes to mind when you bring up that topic to me is the crossover with the critic.
Oh, yeah. Really?
Personally, I like that episode. But I know that Matt Groening hated it. Like, he hated the concept so much that his name isn't even on that episode.
Yes, because he saw it as a really bad, cheap promotion of the critic, didn't he?
Yeah, so that would be one that I'm sure that Matt Groening would want deleted.
Definitely.
There's probably at least a few that all of the writers and everybody who worked would be like, you can just not have that. So yeah, just a little bit ago, I mentioned the idea of the golden age in regards to the Armin Tamzarian episode. But the golden age is this idea that some Simpsons fans hold up. This idea that the show was at its peak between, I think it's season 2 and season 9. Most people saying that the end of it is actually part of the way through season 9 because it's that episode with Skinner. But the thing that I want to talk about in regards to the golden age is whether or not it's actually a thing or if it's sort of just something that old school fans came up with as an excuse to explain away not watching modern episodes of The Simpsons.
I think it's it's almost like a hipster thing where it's cool to like the classic Simpsons, but it's not cool at all to like anything further than season 9, season 10. I think part of it is that people may genuinely feel like, oh, it's a nostalgic time. They associate it with their childhood and they've rewatched those episodes again and again. So they obviously see the different layers of comedy and they see it as real comedic genius. Whereas, I mean, I'm watching the newer episodes on Disney Plus now, and because you are just watching them one after another, because there is so much content, you don't really get the same love that I would if I was watching reruns of it on the BBC at 6 o'clock every night. I mean, I'd watch that Gabbo one. I think I've watched it 50 times.
That's a fantastic episode.
Yes. Gabbo.
Yeah,
that's really good.
I mean, for me, I will definitely say that, like, watching more modern Simpsons, it doesn't hit the same way that watching, like, for instance, my favorite episode of The Simpsons is And Maggie Makes 3.
Oh,
like,
yes.
Watching that episode gives me, like, warm, fuzzy feelings of, like, sitting around watching it when I was younger, and on top of just the fact that it is obviously my favorite episode. That might not have been the best example to bring up. But the point is, like, watching older stuff has that tinge of nostalgia that definitely elevates it a little bit, I guess.
Yeah,
but
definitely.
You kind of have to wonder if that older stuff is actually better than the new stuff.
I know what you mean, because sometimes, I mean, my favourite episode is Flaming Mo, and that's it's so good. It's a relatively old one, and then you rewatch it and you're thinking this is quite slow paced. I mean, especially compared to what it is now, but I think we are YouTube included, we're such in a environment where everything is right there, right then. If it's over 5 minutes, forget about it. But yeah, I think we just hold the golden age of The Simpsons on a high pedestal, and I am a firm believer that I love the golden age of The Simpsons. But
I mean, I'm certainly somebody who subscribes to the idea that things were a little bit different in that time period. I think that, I talked about the family guyification of The Simpsons there for a while, and I feel like that sort of started to happen after season 9, even though at that point in time Family Guy didn't really exist. But there's, as I mentioned, Al Jean, one of the writers, talked about how The Simpsons was just a family sitcom with a flexible reality. Flexible reality referring to, of course, their ability to change things for a joke or for a throwaway line. The example that comes to mind is in the Garbage Day episode, where I believe it was Bart dumped a thing of garbage onto, I think, Homer from a window over top the door of the Simpsons house that doesn't exist literally any other time. So, flexible reality.
Yes.
But nothing like overtly cartoonish. Whereas some of the later seasons, you got into situations where, Homer is thrown into a situation where it's overly cartoonish. Like he has to jump across Springfield Canyon or whatever, or he gets his head stuck between two bridges. Just like stuff like that where it's like it's not grounded in any way.
Yes. I think especially in the early ones, they kind of use the cartoon element in order for them to create things and to morph things into a fun reality, which they could control. Whereas I think now they're probably using it more so to kind of compete with Rick and Morty, try and get it more fast paced and more eclectic. I think they're trying to feel like they should compete when I think sometimes it takes away a bit of the magic. But I think there's still some episodes in the newer seasons where they could be pinpointed to actually be holding up against the golden age. I think you almost have to forage through it.
Well, I mean, there's 32 seasons worth of episodes, so there's a lot that you have to dig through to try to find those, I suppose. Whereas it is pretty easy just to go like, oh, I'm gonna watch some Simpsons. I'll just grab, season 7 and be fine. Or
exactly.
What have you. I'll just sit down and I'll watch those episodes and be fine.
Yes.
I'll know that there's going to be quality. Whereas like if I jump randomly into season like 23 or whatever, I might have to wade through some stuff that isn't as good to get to the quality. But I feel like maybe that's something with The Simpsons that should be thought about, is the idea that like, does The Simpsons really even have to compete with the likes of Rick and Morty, with Family Guy, with all of these other more ridiculous cartoon shows? Or are The Simpsons kind of just their own thing and they're allowed to kind of just be The Simpsons?
I think so. I think the beauty of it, I mean, you did have Futurama, which was set out in space. Like, they had run of the mill of space adventures, sci-fi. And I think The Simpsons, because it's created such a big world and eclectic characters, I think sometimes it's nice to have that element of escapism where you can go back to a time where, Homer's house and the prices don't make sense. And you don't you don't have to be drawn into, I mean, yeah.
just yeah.
Yeah.
But now, like, the question that I have, to bring it around to the idea of longevity is, like, could it be that the show has managed to last for 32 seasons because it is coasting off of that love for that golden age of the show?
I think what The Simpsons tend to do on their social media accounts is they really home in on the fan base. And I think a lot of it is a love letter to the fans to keep it going. And I think it is a lot of the fans that are keeping it going. I think there's so much YouTube channels, Instagram that are promoting Simpsons as a culture within fashion, and I think Vans recently did a collaboration with The Simpsons. I think they're trying to coordinate with our generation to kind of keep it alive a little bit, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so it is very much, which I mean, like, most people will be like, well, duh, obviously it's the fans that keep it going, but like,
yeah,
it is very much like that nostalgic love for Simpsons that's pushing things forward. Mm-hmm. And a lot of that is probably rooted in those, 8 seasons from, 2 to 9.
Definitely. I mean, a lot of shows don't have 8 seasons in them. And
it's true.
That's still a lot of material to work with.
Which, by the way, like, I keep mentioning that the golden age is seasons 2 to 9. I'm just gonna say right now, season 1 doesn't get enough love.
No, those black lines and Homer's voice was amazing.
I like season 1. It's one of the few that I still have on DVD, because I lost a bunch of my Simpsons DVDs in a move a few years back.
Oh no.
And I have season 1, I have season 6 randomly, and then season 9. And so I've got a good selection of, I guess, the golden age.
That's cool though, because you can see how it's changed and it's different, dramatic, amazing.
Maybe I'll have to buy one of the new seasons so that I can have like that whole smorgasbord of how the show has been over the last couple of decades.
Yeah, I thought it would be a really cool idea if you could compare the very first Simpsons Christmas special to the very most recent Simpsons Christmas special, and then you could just do a big analysis over how it's changed over time and like how far it has gone.
Well, there's a video idea for you.
Yeah. Yeah, it's very cool.
Okay, so far on this episode, we've been talking about the longevity of the show, how it's managed to be, going on for the crazy amount of time that it has. But now let's get into a little bit about some of the more like less clerical, more fun side of things, and just talk about the ridiculousness of this show sometimes. And it's done some crazy stuff. One thing that we've been talking about a lot on the channel recently has been Simpsons' penchant for accurately predicting things that they present as jokes most of the time that then wind up actually happening. The one that obviously immediately springs to mind is President Trump. That even happening is something that the writers of The Simpsons thought was so ridiculous that at one point they just, as I said, just threw it out as a joke. And here we are.
Yeah, because I think I read something where the producers were thinking, right, who can we think of in the year 2000 who would be so strange and so crazy to be president of the United States right before Lisa? And I think they said they wanted someone who could create a mess that Lisa could have no control over. So they did that.
And, we're now in a situation where, obviously I'm not going to get into politics because that's not what this episode is about. But I will just say that we are not about to put Lisa Simpson in the White House, which I'm a little disappointed about. She would be good. At least of all the Simpsons family, she's the only one that I would trust with the nuclear launch codes. That has to have been a plot of an episode at one point. Like Homer getting a hold of the nuclear launch codes or something. That sounds like a Simpsons plot.
Or Maggie even. We know what she's like. She could push a few buttons.
I would trust Maggie more than I would trust Homer.
Yeah. I think I agree with you there.
What are some of the other times that The Simpsons has predicted something actually happening in real life?
Well, yeah, because I was looking at it and I was watching a video earlier where it kind of said all the times that The Simpsons had predicted, and there are a few ones that you could debunk, but I think the ones which are the most suspicious is that in a 1993 episode where we're introduced to Three-Eyed Blinky, actually, in 2011, in Argentina, a three-eyed fish was pulled out of a nuclear-fed water reservoir in Argentina, and that was a three-eyed fish. So that was a bit crazy.
Blinky lives is an actual thing.
Blinky forever.
One that has an actual impact on The Simpsons itself is that back in season 10, they predicted that Disney was going to buy 20th Century Fox at some point.
Yes, because James raised this one to me earlier, and he was saying that there's a shot where it says I think it was in 2019, and it's an establishing shot of the 20th Century logo, and then underneath it says something like copyrighted by Walt Disney.
Or like a division of Walt Disney or something like that, yeah.
That's it completely. Yeah, 1998.
Yeah, it's worth pointing out that this was way back in the day. As I said, it was like season 10. They predicted that. And the show's also predicted like other like small things. Lisa's wedding had smartwatches effectively. They've also predicted a few outcomes of NFL Super Bowls pretty accurately.
Oh, have they?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know about this.
It's only happened a couple of times, but they've predicted Super Bowl was at 25. They predicted that the Redskins would win, and then the very next year, I mean, I guess it happened. So, and they've predicted a couple others, but that's the one that I know about.
Yes.
It's just there's the fact that this show is able to do that might seem like a really like fantastical thing, but when you think about it, it's not as impressive. Just simply because the show has been going for 32 years, and the writers, first of all, the writers' room is full of some of the smartest people on television. They've got like people with master's degrees writing for The Simpsons. So these people are obviously going to be able to think about things like the Higgs boson particle that was also predicted by The Simpsons. They've put out so much content, and they've thrown out so many jokes, and they've thrown so much at the wall. Eventually something's going to stick.
Yeah, I think Bill Oakley said, just that. I think he was saying that so many things have happened throughout history that gradually history is going to repeat itself, and that's exactly it. I think there was a thing this year where it was like, oh, The Simpsons has predicted the coronavirus, and that was a fake image. They replaced it with the Osaka flu, which was in Japan. But flus like that have been going on for, since humans have been around, and it's just circulated. So
I remember at the beginning of this year, not even before the beginning of this year, like the end of last year, there was a really popular meme that was circulating that was like, in the 1820s and the 1920s, there were plagues. So in 2020, we're due for a plague. And it's like,
oh, yes.
Well, look at that. Here we are.
History repeating. Exactly.
So, are we going to sit here and be like, oh, memes are fantastic because they predict the future?
Yeah.
Not to like discredit The Simpsons. And it certainly is fun to sit there and look for the moments that they were correct. But it's also worth pointing out that there were a lot of moments where they weren't correct. So
Definitely.
You know.
Definitely.
So, with all that being said, Lydia, where can people find you on the internet if they want to get more of what you have to say?
Oh, yeah. So on YouTube, I'm called The Simpsons Theory. And on Instagram and Twitter, apparently The Simpsons Theory is taken. So I'm at Simpsons Theory. So at Simpsons Theory on Instagram and Twitter.
So go ahead, give her videos a watch. They're all fantastic. I've been watching for quite a while. Been a fan. And of course, follow her on social media. And if you want more from me, you can find me on YouTube under Bender Waffles, all one word. I'm also on Twitter under the same name, BenderWaffles. So jump over there and get onto Twitter and tweet at me which episode my name is a reference to of Futurama. And I'll give you +5 internet points. Thanks everybody for listening, and we'll catch you next time.
Dad, what's that on your lap?
A napkin.
Well, what do you think? Why do you think that The Simpsons has lasted as long as it has? Be sure to let me know down in the comments below, or if you're not watching on YouTube, you can always tweet at me your answer. While you're doing that, why not consider subscribing to the channel or following us on Spotify? Thanks for listening, and stay safe out there.